Today, we're ranking the top 10 most dangerous Targaryens in Westeros history. In previous videos, we ranked the greatest swordsmen and the deadliest battles in Westeros. But this list is different, because dangerous doesn't just mean skill with a blade or the size of a dragon. It's about impact, chaos, and how one person's choices reshape the entire realm for generations. Some ruled with fire, some with fear, some with weakness, and all of them left Westeros worse than they found it. So, let's begin. Starting at number 10, Aegon the Conqueror, known as the Unworthy. And yeah, he absolutely earned that title. This guy ruled from 172 to 184 AC and was basically everything a king shouldn't be. Fat, lazy, spent his time drinking and sleeping around. He had at least 9 mistresses and 16 bastards that we know of. Here's where it gets dangerous though. Right before he died, purely to spite his legitimate son Daemon, Aegon legitimized all his bastards. Every single one. One of them, Daemon Blackfyre, decided he deserved the throne, and that kicked off 5 separate civil wars over the next 100 years. Tens of thousands of people died because this man couldn't stop making bad decisions. The show never covers Aegon the Conqueror. He's book only. But his mess reaches into Game of Thrones. Bloodraven, the three-eyed raven who trains Bran, that's one of Aegon's bastard sons. Yeah, the Greenseer. Literally my channel profile pic exists because this guy couldn't keep it in his pants. And if you want more deep dives like this, hit subscribe. Trust me, we're just getting started. Now, timeline-wise, Aegon the Conqueror died about 100 years before Game of Thrones. But his bastards, especially Bloodraven and Daemon Blackfyre, they're central to the upcoming A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms series. That's the Dunk and Egg era, and Bloodraven is a major player there. So Aegon's chaos starts decades before Dunk and Egg, and still echoes all the way to Bran's story in Game of Thrones. He's at number 10 because his danger was indirect. He didn't lead armies or burn cities himself. But the chaos he unleashed across centuries, that earns him a spot. And next at number 9, Viserys I. If you've watched House of the Dragon, you know exactly who this is. Viserys is the peaceful king who just wanted everyone to get along, and that's exactly why he's dangerous. Now we're talking about 172 years before Game of Thrones here. This is deep House of the Dragon territory. Viserys ruled during what should have been one of the most stable times in Targaryen history. Dragons everywhere. No major wars. The realm at peace. Perfect setup, right? Wrong. Viserys named his daughter Rhaenyra as heir. Bold move. Never been done before. Then he remarried Alicent Hightower and had sons. And instead of clarifying what that meant for succession, instead of making the hard call, he just didn't. He played favorites, ignored every warning sign from his advisors, and genuinely believed love would fix a succession crisis. Spoiler, it didn't. The second Viserys died, the realm exploded into the Dance of the Dragons, the bloodiest civil war in Westerosi history. Half the Targaryen dragons were killed, tens of thousands of soldiers and small folk died, entire houses were wiped out, and it all traces back to one king being too weak to make a decision. Paddy Considine's performance in House of the Dragon is genuinely incredible. He makes you feel for Viserys, makes you understand why he couldn't choose. But that's the thing. Understanding why doesn't change the consequences. In the books, his failure to act is even more obvious. He had literal years to prevent this war. He just chose not to deal with it. Viserys sits at number 9 because weakness from a king isn't just sad, it's a weapon. This man never personally hurt anyone, never rode into battle, never executed someone unjustly. But his refusal to make hard choices killed more people than most warriors with swords ever could. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do is nothing. At number 8, we have Rhaenyra Targaryen, House of the Dragon era, about 172 years before Game of Thrones. Rhaenyra was Viserys' eldest child, his declared heir, and she had everything needed to win. Multiple dragons, half the realm's support, the largest fleet in Westeros backing her. On paper, she should have crushed Aegon II easily. But after her son Lucerys was killed, her faction struck back with blood and cheese. Daemon's people assassinated Aegon II's 6-year-old son. Rhaenyra didn't order it directly, but it was done in her name, and she never punished anyone for it. That's when nobles started questioning her. Quick warning, the upcoming part has House of the Dragon spoilers from the books. If you want to avoid them, skip to the next timestamp. Alright, let's go. Then she takes King's Landing and immediately makes it worse. Taxes the starving population harder, alienates her allies with paranoia, makes enemy after enemy through bad judgment. Eventually, her own people turned on her. They stormed the dragon pit and killed her dragons. The citizens of King's Landing rose up because she'd pushed them too far. The show makes Rhaenyra sympathetic and complex. But in Fire and Blood, she's written much harsher, more paranoid, crueler, politically incompetent. Number 8, because Rhaenyra had every advantage and destroyed her own position through bad decisions. She was dangerous, but mostly to herself. Pride over strategy, revenge over politics. She had the throne and lost it. We have Aegon II at number 7. Rhaenyra's half-brother and her rival during the Dance of the Dragons. Same House of the Dragon timeline, same brutal civil war. Here's the thing about Aegon II. He wasn't particularly smart. He wasn't an amazing fighter. He wasn't a brilliant strategist. What made him dangerous was pure, stubborn refusal to die. This man was burned by dragonfire and crippled so badly he could barely move. And he still kept fighting. At the Battle of Rook's Rest, Aegon and Sunfire took down Rhaenys and her dragon Meleys, one of the most experienced dragon riders in the realm. Aegon got burned so badly in that fight that his armor melted into his skin. Most people would have died. Most people would have surrendered. Aegon just got angrier. His dragon Sunfire was just as stubborn, crippled, missing chunks of flesh, barely able to fly. Quick warning, the upcoming part has House of the Dragon spoilers from the books. If you want to avoid them, skip to the next timestamp. Alright, let's go. But when Rhaenyra was betrayed and captured on Dragonstone, Aegon had her executed by feeding her to Sunfire while her son Aegon the Younger watched. Even half dead and broken, he made sure his revenge was brutal. Even when the war was clearly lost, even when his own allies were begging him to make peace, he refused. He was broken, in constant pain, barely able to rule, and he still wouldn't quit. House of the Dragon hasn't gotten to the end of his story yet, but the books show just how relentless he was. He survived wounds that should have killed him multiple times purely through spite. Number 7. Because you don't need to be brilliant or skilled to be dangerous. Sometimes all it takes is being too stubborn or too angry to give up. Aegon II proved that sheer refusal to accept defeat can be just as deadly as any strategy. Daemon Targaryen, the Rogue Prince. At number 6, House of the Dragon Era. Daemon is Viserys I's younger brother and everything Viserys wasn't. Bold, ruthless, completely unpredictable. He commanded Caraxes, one of the most battle-tested dragons in history. His resume is insane. Conquered the Stepstones and crowned himself king just because. Took Harrenhal without a fight. The garrison fled when they heard he was coming. Married his niece Rhaenyra. Orchestrated blood and cheese. Quick warning, the upcoming part has House of the Dragon spoilers from the books. If you want to avoid them, skip to the next timestamp. Alright, let's go. And his final act? Dove Caraxes onto Vhagar, the biggest dragon alive, in a kamikaze attack. Mid-air collision over the God's Eye. Both dragons died. Both riders died. Daemon jumped off mid-fall and drove his sword through Aemon's eye on the way down. What made him dangerous? You never knew what he'd do next. Start a random war? Kill his own wife? Order an assassination? He'd do all of it, without hesitation. Matt Smith in House of the Dragon makes Daemon complex. You see his loyalty, his love for Rhaenyra. But in Fire and Blood, Book Daemon is colder and more ruthless. He's the rogue prince because even his own family couldn't predict him. Number 6, because Daemon was controlled chaos with the skill to back it up. Enemies feared him, allies never fully trusted him, and nobody knew what he'd do until it was too late. Alright, before we get into the top 5, if you're enjoying this so far, hit that subscribe button. We've got way more deep dives coming on Targaryen history, Game of Thrones lore, and everything in between. And real quick, pause the video and drop a comment with who you think is in the top 5. I want to see if anyone guesses my number 1. Now let's get into the real heavy hitters. At number 5, we have Daemon Blackfyre. Now we're jumping forward in time. This is the Dunk and Egg era. about 100 years before Game of Thrones. And if you're excited for HBO's upcoming A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms series, this is the world they'll be exploring. The Blackfyre rebellions are a huge part of that story. So who is Daemon Blackfyre? He's one of Aegon the Fourth's many bastards. Remember the Unworthy from number 10? This is his mess coming back to haunt the realm. But Daemon wasn't just any bastard. He was tall, strong, charismatic, and a legendary fighter. And his father gave him the Valyrian steel sword, Blackfyre. Literally the sword of Targaryen kings, the blade Aegon the Conqueror carried. Then, on his deathbed, Aegon IV legitimized all his bastards. That was the green light Daemon needed. He raised an army, claimed the Iron Throne was rightfully his, and nearly took it. The first Blackfyre rebellion split the realm in half. Lords had to choose: support the legitimate king Daeron II, or back the bastard with the king's sword and the look of a true dragon. It came down to a massive battle at the Redgrass Field, and Daemon died there, along with his twin sons. But even in death, he almost won. And here's the thing, his death didn't end it. His surviving sons kept the fight going. 4 more Blackfyre rebellions over the next 100 years. Thousands more dead, all because one bastard got a sword and a dream. The show never mentions Daemon Blackfyre, but if you're diving into A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, his legacy is everywhere. Bloodraven, yeah, the three-eyed raven again. He was Daemon's half-brother and rival. Their conflict defines that entire era. Number 5, because Daemon Blackfyre represents what happens when you give a capable, ambitious man just enough legitimacy to be dangerous. He didn't win, but he came close enough to terrify the realm. And even after he died, his name became a rallying cry for rebellion that lasted a century. That's a dangerous legacy. Maegor the Cruel at number 4. And yes, the Cruel is his actual official title in the histories. We're going way back now, about 260 years before Game of Thrones, right after Aegon's conquest. Maegor was Aegon the Conqueror's younger son, and while his older brother Aenys was a weak, indecisive king, Maegor was the opposite. When Aenys died, suspiciously by the way, Maegor swooped in, took the throne, and showed Westeros what Targaryen brutality really looked like. He rode Balerion the Black Dread, the same dragon Aegon used to conquer the Seven Kingdoms, the biggest, most terrifying dragon in history. And Maegor used him without mercy. His resume is genuinely horrifying. He married 6 times, the Black Brides they're called, and killed most of them when they didn't give him sons. He executed 42 people in a single day during his Purge of the Faith militant. When he finished building the Red Keep, he had every builder executed so they couldn't reveal its secrets. Hundreds of people who worked on it, all killed. He fought his own nephew Jaehaerys for the throne, and his Kingsguard eventually abandoned him, because even they couldn't stomach what he was doing. And here's the part that still creeps people out. Maegor died sitting on the Iron Throne with his wrists slashed. To this day, nobody knows if it was suicide, if someone murdered him, or if the throne itself rejected him. The throne was covered in his blood, and they never figured out what happened. The show mentions Maegor once or twice in histories, but they wisely never showed him, because he'd make Joffrey and Ramsay look reasonable. Book Maegor is straight horror material. A Targaryen with unlimited power and zero empathy. He's at number 4, because Maegor represents pure terror with no strategy behind it. Everyone was terrified of him. Nobles, small folk, even his own family. But his reign only lasted 6 years. He ruled through fear and brutality until something stopped him. The 3 people ahead of him had longer reigns and reshaped the realm in ways that lasted centuries. But in terms of raw, concentrated evil, Maegor might be number 1. The Mad King, Aerys II, at number 3. Now we're right before Game of Thrones. This is Robert's Rebellion, about 17 years before the main show starts. Aerys was the last Targaryen to sit the Iron Throne, and he nearly took King's Landing with him when he fell. Aerys planted wildfire caches all throughout King's Landing, under the Sept of Baelor, under the Red Keep, under houses and streets. His plan was to burn the entire city if he was about to lose. 500,000 people would have died. His final order to his pyromancers was burn them all. If Jaime Lannister hadn't killed him, breaking his Kingsguard oath, the capital would have gone up in green flames. But even before that, Aerys was spiraling into madness for years. He burned Lord Rickard Stark alive in his own armor while forcing his son Brandon to watch and strangle himself trying to save his father. That's what kicked off Robert's rebellion. That execution was so brutal and unjust that the entire realm turned against him. The thing about Aerys is he wasn't always mad. Early in his reign, he was actually promising, charismatic, ambitious. But over the years, paranoia ate him alive. He thought everyone was plotting against him. He stopped cutting his hair and nails. He refused to let blades near him, even to trim his beard. By the end, he was barely recognizable as human. The show only gives us glimpses of Aerys in flashbacks, Bran's visions, but the books detail his descent over years. Tyrion mentions him, Barristan tells Dany about him, and what's terrifying is you couldn't predict him. One day he'd seem lucid, the next he'd be cackling while someone burned. Number 3, because Maegor was cruel but consistent. You knew what he'd do. Aerys was insane, and that unpredictability made him more dangerous. Nobody could reason with him. Nobody could predict his next move. And he came within minutes of committing the largest mass murder in Westerosi history. Jaime saved 500,000 lives by killing him, and he's been called Kingslayer for it ever since. Daenerys Targaryen at number 2. And yeah, I already know this one's going to be controversial. This is Game of Thrones' main timeline. We all watched her journey from souled bride to mother of dragons to, well, what happened in Season 8? Here's why Daenerys is number 2, and hear me out. She's the only Targaryen in over 150 years to bring dragons back from extinction. Not inherit them from her family, she hatched them from stone eggs that had been dead for centuries. Nobody thought it was possible. She walked into fire and came out with 3 living dragons. Then she built an empire from nothing. She was sold like property, lost everything, and still conquered multiple cities across Slaver's Bay. She freed slaves, built armies, survived assassinations, and became one of the most powerful people in the world with zero support system. Just her dragons, and her willpower. Then she burned King's Landing. Over 100,000 people dead in a single afternoon. Now look, the show rushed her turn, and a lot of fans hated how it was executed. Season 8 is divisive, to say the least, and in the books, we haven't even gotten there yet. George R.R. Martin might take her character in a completely different direction. We don't know. But in the show's canon, it happened. Here's why she's number 2, though, and this is what makes her historically dangerous. Aegon the Conqueror inherited his dragons from his family. Daenerys created hers from what everyone thought were fossils. She conquered cities with no noble backing, no wealth, no army to start with. And when she finally broke, she destroyed Westeros' capital in hours. Aegon took 2 years and careful strategy to conquer 6 kingdoms. Daenerys burned King's Landing to ash before the sun set. She proved that even 300 years after the conquest, even after dragons went extinct, Targaryens are still the single most dangerous force in Westeros when they have fire and blood at their command. Number 2, because she represents the Targaryen potential at its absolute peak and its absolute worst. The same power that freed slaves and broke chains also incinerated a city full of people who'd already surrendered. That's dangerous on a level few Targaryens ever reached. And at number 1, Aegon the Conqueror. This isn't even a debate. We're going all the way back to the beginning, 300 years before Game of Thrones. Before the Iron Throne existed, before the 7 kingdoms were united, before Targaryens ruled Westeros, Aegon changed everything. He landed at what's now King's Landing with his 2 sister wives, Visenya and Rhaenys, and 3 dragons, Balerion, Vhagar, and Meraxes. And in just 2 years, he conquered 6 kingdoms and forced them all to kneel. The Field of Fire is the perfect example of why he's number 1. 4,000 men, the combined armies of the Reach and the Westerlands, burned alive in minutes. 3 dragons unleashed hell, and the survivors surrendered immediately. Harrenhal, the strongest castle ever built in Westeros. Aegon melted it like a candle. The stone literally dripped. After that, lords across the continent bent the knee rather than face dragonfire. Then Aegon forged the Iron Throne from the swords of his defeated enemies. 1,000 blades melted together by dragonfire. He didn't just conquer, he created a symbol that would define Westeros for 3 centuries. But here's what really makes Aegon number 1. He chose mercy after proving he didn't need to. He could have burned every castle, killed every lord who hesitated, turned the entire continent to ash. Instead, he offered terms. Bend the knee, keep your lands, keep your titles, just acknowledge me as king. And because he'd already shown what refusal looked like, they accepted. Every single Targaryen on this list, every war, every rebellion, every dragon rider, they all lived in the world Aegon built. Daenerys burned King's Landing, the city Aegon founded. Maegor sat on the throne Aegon forged. Aerys almost destroyed the kingdom Aegon created. The Dance of the Dragons was fought over the crown Aegon established. The show mentions Aegon constantly, his prophecy, his conquest, his legacy. And Fire and Blood covers his campaign in detail. But his shadow is over absolutely everything. He didn't inherit power, he didn't get lucky. He took 3 dragons and built an empire that lasted 300 years. Number 1 because Aegon the Conqueror set the standard that every Targaryen after tried to live up to. He's the reason we're even ranking Targaryens. He created the game board everyone else played on. That's not just dangerous, that's legendary. So there you have it, the top 10 most dangerous Targaryens in Westeros history. From Aegon the Fourth's chaos through incompetence, all the way to Aegon the Conqueror, literally creating the world they all fought over. Now, I know some of you are furious right now. How is Daemon only number 6? Daenerys at number 2 is insane. Where's Bloodraven? I want to hear it all. Drop your arguments in the comments. Tell me who I ranked too high, too low, or who I completely missed. Seriously, fight me down there. That's what the comments section is for. And here's the big question. What do you want to see next? More rankings like this? Should I rank the greatest Targaryen dragons? The smartest political moves? Or with a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms coming out? Do you want me to dive into that era? The Blackfire rebellions, Duncan Egg's adventures, Bloodraven's schemes. Actually, if you haven't seen it yet, I made a video breaking down how a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is different from Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. Different tone, different stakes, way more grounded. It's up on the channel, so check that out if you're curious about what to expect from the new show. Let me know what you want in the comments. Drop your ranking disagreements, your video ideas, whatever. And if you made it this far and haven't subscribed yet, what are you doing? Hit that button. We've got so much more content coming.